All right, and we got a couple more problems in your Chapter 8 practice test here. We got 44A on the screen, Algebra Skill 44A, where you are asked to take this number and to put it into scientific notation. And the rule for scientific notation is that the first number in scientific notation has to be equal to or greater than 1 and less than 10. So when we look at this number, obviously this number is very big. But what we want to do is put a decimal place somewhere in this number so that that number will be between 1 and 10. And there's only one place we can do it. If I put the decimal point right here, ignoring the commas, this number becomes 478. If I put the decimal point here, that is 47.8. And if I put the decimal point here, that is 4.7, which is in between 1 and 10. And if I put the decimal point right before the 4, that becomes less than 1, which isn't going to work. So this decimal point needs to go right after the 4 and before the 7. So I'm going to have my number look something like this. Put the decimal place, or decimal point, after the 4, before the 7, and then write out the whole rest of the number here. This number is now in between 4 and 10. On the test it says to round your decimal, or round your answer to 2 decimal places. So I'm going to chop off everything after the decimal place 2 places later. So I'm looking at 4.78. And then I'm going to ignore the rest of these numbers. So I'm going to write 4.78. And then in scientific notation we multiply that number by 10. And that 10 has an exponent. And the exponent is how many times you move the decimal point from where you put it to where it needs to end up. So if I multiply by 10 once, I end up with 47. If I multiply by 10 again, I end up with 478. By 10 again, by 10 again, and again, and again, and again. And I want to get to the very end of this number. So I move it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And once I get to 11, then I have the number that I started with. So our scientific notation will be 4.78 from taking 4.78. And I only go to 7/8 because you are asked to only round it to 2 decimal places times 10 to the 11th. The 10 will always be in scientific notation. That's what makes scientific notation what it is. The 11 is how many times you move the decimal point from where you put it to make the number in between 1 and 10 to where it was when we started the problem. We started with this large number, and multiplying this by 10 to the 11th will result in this very large number. Another example where we have a small number, but the idea is just the same. Write it in scientific notation, rounding to 2 decimal places. Where can I put a decimal point so that this number is in between 1 and 10? I can't put it at the end because that would be 11,000. This would be 1,045. This is 114. So I'm going to put the decimal point right here. And by putting the decimal point right here, I have this number, 1.1456. And all these numbers are now behind the decimal place. So I have 1.1, and I'm going to change this 4 to a 5 by rounding because we want to put it to 2 decimal places. So I have 1.15. Notice this is a 4 here and it's a 5 here because I round this 4 up to a 5 because this number is a 5. And then I multiply this by 10 because that's the format of scientific notation. And now it's a negative 9. And the reason it's a negative 9 is because I put the decimal point here, but it started way back here. So if I put the decimal point here, and then if I move backwards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, if I go backwards 9, that needs to be a negative 9 for the exponent. So I'd move this backwards 9 times. 44b, now we have scientific notation and we're writing it in base 10, so we're just doing this multiplication. And since I'm taking this number and multiplying it by 10 to the 7th, I'm essentially going to move the decimal point 7 times. I'm going to move it 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6, 7. That might be a little bit confusing because the times 10 to the 7th is in the way. But what I'm going to end up with is not this number, but if I move it 7 times, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Notice in the empty slots there I filled in zeros. This is not our answer because the decimal point needs to move to the end, so our answer will be 25,865,000. Because the decimal point started here, we multiplied it by 10 to the 7th, moving it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, ending there. So this number multiplied is 25,865,000. Another example, going the opposite way. Now we have an exponent of -8. So we have the exponent, or the decimal place, right here. We are going to move this backwards now 8 places. And by moving it backwards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, notice all the numbers in red are the places that the decimal point will move. And if I move it backwards, my decimal point ends up right here. And 5.0147 times 10 to the -8th will be 0.00000050,147. So that's going from scientific notation to base 10.